famed author Clive Cussler.
The hero Dirk Pitt.
If they're not United States astronauts, they can only be aliens. I do not believe in supernatural fairy tales. So, the fabled Star Wars has begun.
Cyclops. Episode 2. Cuban Piffle Crisis.
Dude, what is the baby oil of Puff Daddy? I don't know if anybody should be allowed outside, even if he just the personal ownership alone means he's got problems. I don't know what problems. I don't need to know.
Not just the baby oil, but I was reading something on the Knowledge Fight subreddit about the FBI agents who had to go in and catalog the dildo room at Puff Daddy's mansion.
Oh my God. That's
like, wow, that's the worst phrase.
What cat's here?
She does this whenever I have calls at work too.
Does she ever make gremlin noises when you're on phone calls?
Sometimes if I have to shove her out of the way. Hosting a meeting and sharing something on my screen, and then the cat's like, I want to touch the keyboard too.
That was the best part of the pandemic, was seeing PBS News and all of the anchors were at home and all of the cats doing, just Lisa Desjardins' cat would lick its crotch no matter what she did. She'd be talking about the pandemic and the stock market crash and the housing crisis, and her cat's on this immaculate sofa behind her. The room's been perfectly staged. It's very prim and proper to be on the news, and you can't stop the cat.
You have cats walking in, you have small kids walking in.
My husband got in trouble for a conference call when Katie was 3 because he had the camera on. It was the only time he had the camera on. And she came in and she stood behind him quietly. So he didn't know she was there. But she was in the field and just picking her nose, which I think is hilarious. But he got in trouble for it.
I got my last job because my youngest did that.
Oh, really?
I was living down south and we had no money. I was finally, I broke down. I was applying for jobs up north because that's where the jobs that actually paid money were. So I was doing my job interview with the company, and I was upstairs in my bedroom. I had my laptop aimed at a blank wall so it looked professional. This was 14 years ago, so this was probably before this was nearly as common. And I had the door locked, and my wife is keeping all the kids downstairs while I have this very important job interview.
Sure, super important.
Even with the door locked, I just heard a rattle, and then the door opened, because I guess the locks don't work. And then my youngest walks in, naked except for a blanket being held around like a cape, and just pokes his head in and goes, hi. And is asking me who I'm talking to, who the people are on the screen. And I'm like, oh, that's so great, Steph. There's a kid in the room. And I'm try and get the kid out. Circles around behind, pokes his head in from the other side. Hello.
Well, you can't get rid. Once they're focused, now he knows there's, or the kid knows that there's new people, and he or she can get attention, and then that's it. It's like keeping a buffalo from water.
Yeah, apparently that the whole interaction was so adorable that they told me straight up to my face, no, that's why we hired you. We saw you interacting with a 2-year-old, and it was the cutest thing ever. And then they would tell people that. We'd be at a field meeting at a pulp mill or something, and they'd be like, here's Topper, he's one of our designers. You wouldn't believe how he got hired. So it's little kids walking around.
I love the story because it is on its own a great story. If it happened to a lady, though, she'd be not getting the job. They'd be like, she can't raise her kid.
Probably. Oh, she can't even keep her kids out of the room for 5 minutes.
That's visceral violent fantasies until then.
Ah, son of a bitch. All right. My boss is calling. 1 second.
Okay. My daughter's calling. Okay. Hi, Cussler Hustlers. Boy, did we have a tangent. It took days.
Our tangent was so long, Eric Adams got indicted in the meantime.
For the first time?
I don't know about the first time. I don't know his personal life, but
In this timeline, we are on. Oh, let me get my phone because I do have this timeline. I have the Eric Adams math in my phone.
as all good Americans must.
Okay, we are 2 resigned police commissioners and 1 school board commissioner resigned, all being investigated by the FBI.
Neat.
So that's where we're on the timeline. 2 commissioners, 1 school board, FBI surveillance.
We have no idea where they're.
There could be many more. I don't know how many police commissioners we can go through, but we'll see.
Just a perfectly normal news day.
Oh, and it's not I don't live in the city, so it's not my police commissioner. My police commissioner is the police chief of several towns at the same time, but somehow that's legal.
When you're the chief, that's just paperwork, I assume.
There's a multitude of issues. I'd have to sit down and tell you something else.
She made a lot of facial expressions just now.
I was like, let's pivot.
Good plan. I realized, we're going off on a tangent again. We started recording yesterday, and then we both had to go. This is one of the reasons we're switching to every 2 weeks again.
Oh, and the word I was struggling for last episode was steampunk. So anybody who was yelling at their podcast machine, steampunk was the word I was looking for. We covered Puff Daddy's baby oil.
Some other stuff.
One thing I didn't bring up.
And now.
Oh, yeah, cool. Do the thing with your voice.
Oh, I was going to say, and now we're getting to Cyclops Chapter 8. Do that thing with your
Cussler
voice.
Hustlers.
Because we're the Cussler Hustlers and we can't do intros.
Fuck intros. Or segues. You know that JFK left a bear in Central Park? You've heard that story, right? Or RFK Jr.
RFK left a bear and claimed like a bike hit it?
Yes. That part's all been hashed out as weird Kennedy stuff. But he did it because he had to make a party, and then he had to make a flight. His flight was at JFK. And this has been fucking with my head the whole time. RFK Jr. had to catch a flight at JFK Airport because it's named that because his uncle's head exploded and he saw it? Real life.
There's something off about dynasties.
They're wrong.
Yeah. And I say this as somebody from Canada who we have our second Trudeau.
Yeah, you don't get repeats. Stop the repeats. The fail-son effect on the world can stop if we just make it stop.
Here's where I splice in the song from The Simpsons.
To stop those monsters, 1, 2, 3. Here's a fresh new way that's trouble-free.
Just don't look. Just don't look.
Oh, yes, and let's get to Cyclops. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cyclops. Episode 2.
As far as I can tell from the chapters we might get to today, all talking.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's fast. There's wacky stuff happening with fun characters, but it's just plot, 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 plot. Here's all the plot that you need to know and understand, which makes me really hope that there's going to be a lot more action later.
I hope so.
But we have like 5 parlor scenes in a row here, and a dinner party.
Oh yes, we got through 6 because the guy pushed his glasses under his toupee. I can't wait to get back to Lieutenant Harry Victor.
And we got through 7 because that was Sweat and Rooney on the fishing boat talking about how the corpses were frozen.
Yes, like you would wedding cake. They were frozen for a long, long time.
Now I'm picturing the corpses frozen, but like holding hands.
In tears. Like T-I-E-R.
I knew what you meant.
And now we get to Dirk's house, really awesome, but look derelict from the outside.
Yes.
And reading this and watching Grand Designs now, oh, was he ahead of the trend, Mr. Cussler? Everyone wants to live in a rundown barn now, and they want to look right with the land, and they want to have rusted walls and corrugated, rusted paneling. This is peak 2024 style, is what Dirk's house looks like.
Yep. Just some random hangar at the airport.
And it's like a mansion on the inside. He's got countless cars. Some in a state of disrepair because he is in the middle of putting one back together because it was blown up in the last book.
Yes. A special mention of the Talbot Lago.
Oh, that's a beautiful car. Look that up, everyone. It'll make your day better.
One question, though. It says, like, he walks in, he's tired and jet-lagged from his flight from Miami to Washington. Aren't those in the same time zone?
Yes. That is
okay.
That is not a horizontal flight.
He's got that north-south jet lag.
Oh my God, you just triggered a memory of my father's father, who died when I was like 6, and we flew to Florida. Everybody would retire to Florida. It was a rule in the 80s. And I thought, oh, we're going to change times. I heard about it on the TV. And I was so disappointed that we went up and down instead of side to side. And Grandpa told me about time zones. Yay, Grandpa.
The day is longer, but yeah.
This is a real cutting-edge house. He's got a cordless phone. Not a cell phone, a cordless phone.
Yeah, late 80s. I guess those weren't big yet.
I didn't get one until 1991.
Whoa.
I asked my sister. She always wanted one. She is older than I am, and she had a better memory about that one.
And he gets a rude phone call on that cordless phone.
He does. It's Sandra Cabot, who is the personal secretary for Mrs. Jessie LeBaron, the widow of the Mr. LeBaron, who was supposedly fricasseed flying the blimp, but that's in question. Anyway, the widow's having a party, as you do.
Mm-hmm. She's having a party at 8, but she wants to meet Dirk at 4.
The whole concept of my husband's dead, or at least the public thinks he is, party, weird.
I feel this party was already scheduled, and there's no way she could possibly cancel just because her husband got turned into a frozen reheated cheesesteak in Miami when his blimp went missing. No, it's fine.
Yes, we're supposed to believe in high society, in the highest of echelons. You're just supposed to, keep a stiff upper lip, walk it off. Oh, did you lose a leg? Oh, that's not elegant. Dear, you're bleeding.
I feel the rules are different when you're a billionaire.
There was a Hamptons jewel thief that capitalized on the politeness of people not leaving dinner parties, and he would go upstairs because you couldn't excuse yourself. This was like the 80s and 90s when they took these rules really very, very strictly, and he just had hours.
That's amazing. But yeah, she is like super rude to him, says she won't visit him. He has to come to her. He's like, okay, fine, I'll come.
He hates people that have other people make calls for them.
Oh, yeah.
Which he's never had issue when the president or Sandecker or other people have called them via secretary.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time he's taken issue with it.
He's kicked back down to dealing with Sandra Cabot, and she's like, well, what car do you drive so I can alert the staff? And he looks over in the corner, and he's like, I drive an old convertible. And Cabot's like, park by the servant's house.
Yes.
So right off the bat, Pitt hates everybody involved. And I kind of do, too.
He's being lessened. He's not nearly snooty enough for whatever party this is going to be.
But he gets back at her.
This is a case of, you don't know what army I bring with me.
Yes.
Or, don't you know who I am?
Actually, even better, at the end of the chapter is the best part, because that's where Dirk has people to go. Don't you know who he is for him?
Yes.
It's great. But we're not there yet.
As we've established, Dirk Pitt does not like people who won't make their own phone calls.
Pert Dick, you finally said it.
Pert Dick. Yes, I finally said it. I have a doctor I can't reach by phone anymore because their phone tree is so inscrutable. I have to go there like it's Bridgerton times to ye old doctor. So Dirk Pitt would light the world on fire today.
Uh-huh. I feel he just wouldn't have a cell phone. He would just show up at people's places. He would use the CIA to get satellite photos and find out exactly where they are and just show up.
Oh, absolutely. He would be doing things with an 8-track. But he would be deeply miserable. Oh, he'd be Q. Technology would turn him Q. Mrs. Snooty Pants is having her garden party, and the Secretary of State will be there, so Dirk Pitt makes sure he takes his old car from the 50s and arrives 4 hours late, so he's right on time for the fancy party. And he pulls right up to the front, and there's a huge plate glass window. His car makes a scene. He is driving
a 1951 Daimler convertible, and I sent you the picture for this, and it's described very hornily.
It's an aircraft carrier. It's huge.
It's 22 feet long. It weighs 3 tons. It has handcrafted chromed scroll work.
It is a beautiful car. Look it up if you have the chance. This is another just gorgeous piece of art of a car. And I do remember old cars. Young people now have no idea the joy it is to see the end of your hood, or to have a hood that you can make a stop sign and not be in the intersection. Your car can clear the intersection before your backseat passengers.
Yes.
In some cases.
This car is all hood. It's all style.
It's beautiful. Hard to drive.
And of course, he parks by the servants' quarters.
Well, he was told to. But he played a little funny business with, he was on the list, just late, he tells the guard. So the guard's like, oh, you're just late. Go right up.
And the guard sees the car and goes, well, you're obviously rich and important. Jesus Christ, come on in.
Oh, the car's very shiny.
Yes.
And sparkly. For those people out there who didn't understand the car talk that was deeply concise before, pretty. It's a pretty car.
And he walks in, and Miss LeBaron is by the front door, like, saying hi to all the guests, and she, like, admires the car, shakes his hand, and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. And he's like, I'm Pitt.
And that still doesn't ring a bell with her.
Yes.
And she treats him very shabbily.
Uh-huh.
Almost like cartoon rich person. But I've met people like this. They're out there. I've had a person pour coffee on my feet when I was a personal assistant. It happens.
Eee.
It's hilarious. It was at the time. Don't worry. But it doesn't beg or believe that someone is so out of touch with reality that they would make somebody important to them whom they're trying to hire leave because they parked in the wrong spot. I can believe that.
Specifically the person she wants to find her missing, presumed dead husband.
It's not a strategy I would take. I'm just saying it. I believe it.
Also, I don't know. Okay, so one thing here where it doesn't quite make sense. Does she just want to talk to him? Because all she knows is that he's the guy who found the blimp and, like, brought the blimp down. Because as we establish at the end of the chapter, she doesn't know who he is exactly.
Was she sedated when her husband was kidnapped too? Because that's a hell of a media bubble to be in. There were 3 channels back then. This guy saved the president and raised the Titanic.
Yeah.
He's the most eligible bachelor in D.C. She should know him just for seating purposes for dinner parties.
Yeah, they talk for a bit. She is very rude to him. He basically tells her that he doesn't respond to shabby treatment and she can fuck off. And that's when Oates and Fawcett walk over and start talking to Jesse, and this is the best part of the chapter.
They're like, oh yeah, that's Dirk. And she's like, you know him? Oh yeah, it's the senator's son. You know, for the research you want to release the grant money, that senator, that's his son.
He raised the Titanic. He saved the president. He could entirely derail your oil drilling because his father, Senator George Pitt from California, heads up the Senate Committee on Oil Exploration, and Numa signs off on all the environmental studies. So the fact that she was being rude does not sink in, but suddenly realizing that he could hit her in the wallet, she's like, oh shit.
Yes. She's had the everything we dream about moment. The, oh my God, I treated this person poorly. I am doomed now. We all have dreamt about doing that to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she just makes it up by buying him a martini. We'll get there. But deep fantasy fulfillment here. Clive had a fight with the wife, because otherwise this chapter makes no sense.
I think he just wanted to stick it to the wealthy elite a little bit more in this one.
Oh yeah, he had a place and she had to be put in it. Now we get to chapter 9 and this baffling sentence. We're at Numa HQ. And they're talking about the Prospeteer and the mystery of it. Because it's all, everyone agrees. Those 3 guys were not the people who were supposed to be in the gondolier of the Zeppelin. And Dirk or Sandecker says the mystery occurred over water. So Numa has to be involved. Numa, national, underwater, not over. There's no O in Numa. It must have been Hiram that said it to, Numa's got to be involved. Dirk is Walter's involved.
Well, obviously. And we get just a complete, extremely granular breakdown on the history of the Cyclops. Everybody on board. There's pictures of Captain Worley and Forbes, who looks like a greyhound. Second Officer Church was tiny and frail. The final picture of a courtroom, because there was also 2 people who were convicted of murder on the boat, who were in the brig being sent back to Washington.
And the murder, we know not what that's about yet.
Yeah. 2 people killed a third on the USS Pittsburgh, and they're being sent back to America to, like, face justice. And, like, there's a lot of detail, a lot of information, and I don't know if any of it's important yet. But I wrote it down, just in case.
It's a lot of specs, lovingly detailed.
Mm-hmm. There's also some questions on exactly how LeBaron got rich, because they go into the history of the LeBarons, and he came from hardware store money, so he was kind of rich, and he had a salvage operation in the 50s that went broke. And then 2 years later, he launched his magazine and was instantly like at the top of the food chain in publishing.
Yes, it was the most premier magazine and the most in demand, like Feminist Weekly, which we were introduced to in book 1, I believe. And then Dirk has to learn some things about this craft. My takeaway was Hiram Yeager introduces him to the supercomputer, who's named Hope. And Dirk's like, it's a chick.
It's an Alexa.
I'm talking to her. She's talking to me.
He does flirt with her, yeah.
He's like, she's giving me all the answers I need to know. I just ask.
Finally, a woman does what I say.
She's programmed for that. He really enjoys the talking computer. This is so sharp for image. And then we meet Dr. Raphael O'Meara, who comes in blazing with exposition.
Yes, that is all of chapter 10. And this is another trope for side characters, because we have these side characters who are extremely knowledgeable about something, but they're also huge, have a giant beard, and yell and drink. This is the third one we've had, because so far we've had Perlmutter, who shows up in like every third book. We had somebody in the last book whose name I can't remember, but he was a huge historian.
The Hawaiian...
Oh, and there was the huge artist from Night Probe, the giant guy with a beard who drinks and yells.
Yes!
And now we have Raphael O'Meara, the giant guy with the beard who drinks and yells.
Maybe, remember the isopod that you showed me that made me cry? Maybe he just never worked it through all the way. He never had his isopod moment.
He met somebody like this when he was in the Navy or something, and that's just who he goes to for the fun, knowledgeable guy.
And it wrote on his hard drive, for sure.
Yep. Loud Santa.
Raphael O'Meara, which is a great name. Him and Dirk start going down treasure hunting talking. The search for El Dorado, the Gilded Man, that's what Raphael is assuming Dirk is looking for when he's asking about the Cyclops and the Prospeteer.
Yes, because Miss LeBaron said at the party that her husband was looking for El Dorado, and Pitt's like, whatever. It's apparently so ridiculous that
Narnia.
Pitt wouldn't even entertain it. And then Raphael says it, and Pitt's like, oh, if a smart guy says it.
Well, this guy does throw down some more detail. He was in the middle of getting kicked out of a garden party.
Yes. So much more detail. I had to write a lot down for this, too, and I'm pretty sure I left a bunch of it out.
And I'm not sure Dirk asked for all the detail. This might be an info dump. And they talk about 1675 conquistador expedition. Out of 80, only one survived, and he spoke of cannibals.
Yes. He was a monk who wandered out of the jungle babbling about a city of gold guarded by an angry cannibal tribe called the Zenonas, which were mentioned in the prologue right before he got stabbed.
There is a large 6-foot horny gold statue that is solid gold and very detailed.
It's solid gold on a plinth of rose quartz with a 1,200 carat ruby heart and a 40-pound emerald head.
Wow.
And Dirk's like, wow.
I missed the emerald head.
And Dirk's like, wow, that would look great in a government building. Which is the least imaginative thing I can imagine.
That's a sentence. Congratulations. That was great.
Think how great it would look in a museum or the lobby of Numa. I'm like, you dumbass.
It seems horrid. It seems like it would make children cry. It's got a green head. It's 6 feet tall. It's so shiny you can't look at it.
It's also worth $1 billion.
If it falls on you, it will murder your village.
That's like the largest ruby ever was 80 carats, and this one apparently has a 1,200 carat ruby.
I do love whenever the crown jewels that Queen Elizabeth wore, there was a big ruby in the center, like third eye style.
Star of Africa or something? Star of India?
And that was there for hundreds of years. Something like that. And it's a garnet.
Womp womp. Emeralds are also a lot more common than I thought they'd be, because they're often shitty. Because I had an industrial emerald about the size of a golf ball. I got it for $50.
Because I know on the Mohs hardness scale, it's hard, but it's not harder than like diamond drill bits, and those are all over the place.
Mm-hmm. I guess it does have lots of uses, like as a grinding powder, as tiny lenses, and all sorts of stuff. And I just had like a big, shitty, chock full of flaws, but real emerald.
Oh, yeah.
Surprisingly common. It's the nice ones that are rare.
I don't know if you get these ad campaigns for Zales or Jared.
Oh, yeah.
Jewelry commercials. It used to be that diamonds that were discolored or kind of beige or brown were just used. Those were like, okay, industrial. And then one of those companies said chocolate. No, they're chocolate. And I was like, oh, I love the hustle there.
They're extra rare.
It's just a reframing that I truly appreciate because that didn't have to be done. It's not like there's a shortage of diamonds. They all come from one spot.
There is a Dirk Pitt book specifically about the diamond shortage and the warehouses full of diamonds in South Africa. And that's later on.
I can't wait for that nomenclature. Oh, that'll be a ride.
I think that one's Shockwave. It's a good one. It's a weird one.
And then we get a lot of detail about the Golden Girl, and Dirk gets up and goes, I gotta find the Cyclops.
There's also a rundown about Colonel Ziegler of the British Corps of Army Engineers, and he was an explorer. He gets wind of La Dorada, which, by the way, El Dorado is the golden man, La Dorada is the golden lady, which is the more accurate one. And he goes into the jungle and disappears with 20 men, and 2 years later, an American surveyor finds him 500 miles away in a different part of the jungle, alone and crazy, and the Brits were never notified, but it seems like the last person to talk to him was the American consul general in Brazil. And they draw a lot of threads that this is the person who was in bed on the Cyclops being treated by the doctor right before it nosedived.
That's a lot of red threads to put together. Those threads were doing heavy lifting. There was a lot of plot holes they went around. But speed of plot, I'm jiggy with it, they connected it.
Yes.
Then we go to chapter 11, and the president is working out with Ira Hagen, his brother-in-law, we find out. I first read this as Uda Hagen, because that's a name I'm familiar with. Uda Hagen is an acting teacher who's very snooty. Like, if you learned acting in the 40s, you would have to read Uda Hagen's book. And then there's also Haagen-Dazs, ice cream frame.
Hagen. Yeah, he's an old undercover CIA agent and now like a fake restaurateur because he's still undercover.
Oh, yes, he's explaining how restaurants work to the president. You make food and they buy it and you charge them more for liquor and everyone's happy.
And the president's like, interesting.
Then the president waxes nostalgically about his sister Martha, who happens to be Ira's dead wife. And we find out that the president had a lot of brothers and sisters, but Martha was his favorite.
Well, yeah. The one who's dead has to be the favorite. I think you're supposed to say that.
At the funeral, aloud.
All the brothers and sisters in the audience are like, hey.
And Ira's like, how are you doing? And the president's like, I'm a little slow, but the gray matter is 100%. Which he probably has to say to himself every minute of every day. As like a self-affirmation. My brain's fine. My brain is okay.
Don't think about the tube. Yeah, he brings He brings Ira the file for the Jersey colony.
And only him, because right now the president is suspicious of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't blame him because there is probably some not even unresolved trauma, unremembered. His body did a lot of traveling when he wasn't there. What does that even do to your systems?
He was in a medically induced coma for a month.
I think that takes a year or so to get back from.
Because as far as he knows, he walked onto the Eagle, he walked onto the president's yacht, fell asleep, and then woke up being, okay, the president now, get in there, go.
Yeah.
Have some coffee, go, you're president.
And it's a month in the future. He time traveled and got a promotion. So maybe he's not questioning things. But him and Ira discuss this, the space colony, the Jersey colony that the U.S. apparently has. And the president's like, my God, the Russians sit down in 9 days. What will happen?
And Ira's like, if all this is true, our intelligence agencies are a bunch of blind mutants.
Well...
How did we not know we were sending all this stuff into space?
It's fine. Right now, we're past the second assassination attempt on former sitting president that's running for president.
As you know...
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know?
No. I know nothing.
You don't know?
I don't know. No, I don't know. I know nothing. And you know what?
And the second one, no big deal. Another Secret Service agent that works in the Harris campaign shot himself in the foot yesterday. And one of the Harris agents just crashed his car into a tree out of nowhere.
Shot himself in the foot metaphorically or actually? Because I also know there was a Secret Service agent who is currently under investigation.
With bullet.
Inappropriate conduct. With bullet. Damn.
I do like a floral metaphor, but no, I wasn't using one. He shot himself in the foot.
Well, it's a phrase I use a lot. They're not sending their best.
We never are. We never have. That's just the way humanity rolls.
Yeah. But yes, the president wants IRA to round up the core group behind the Jersey colony. And it turns out that a photographer for the Washington Post was recording the golf game. So the president asked for blow-ups, and he has a picture of Joe. Indigo-eyed Joe.
Which I like, because he did it under a graceful excuse of, I'm going to sign this for my driver. And that stuff does happen. And I love an elegant little reminder of niceties in the world. But when Ira sees the picture, he's like, that's Leo.
Yes.
That's not Joe. You know this guy. This is from our childhood. He was our fat friend. And the president's like, of course I don't recognize him. He's thin.
He was on their high school baseball team. And I had to write down that his initial reaction was, but Leo was a fat kid.
Yes, he was the ball.
He became a health nut. He patented rocket and space systems for the government. Unfortunately, he died 20 years ago.
We'll go from that to Castro. Just a jarring leap. They're like, oh, maybe Castro did it. Forget those days. Castro's been dead a long time. I love the bee in the bonnet that he was, where that was a plausible. Maybe Castro did it.
The chapter ends with Secretary of State Oates reading something from his undersecretary, and it's some crazy letter from Castro. And they talk about the letter, but they don't actually let us see what's inside it. And Oates is like, this makes no sense. This sounds like it was written by a madman, but he went to such great lengths to get this letter to us, you're saying? And the undersecretary is like, yes, the people who gave it to us snuck into the country on a blimp.
That seems even crazier.
More blimp stuff. So I think they were hiding on the Prospertier when it crashed. Like, that's how they got into the country. I think they stole it from Cuba, whoever these people are.
Oh, but we had some crazy guys from the U.S. trying to invade Venezuela, like all on their own. Like 6 of them. Do you remember? It was like 2017.
No, I don't think so.
It was a big
I
news
missed that one.
time. But like some bros just got together and they're like, we're going to storm Venezuela. That didn't make them less crazy just because they went far.
Well, last week, Venezuela detained 6 foreigners, including 3 Americans, over alleged plot to kill Maduro.
I'm not up on the new one. This was an older one.
This is a new one. This is a week ago.
You know, mine was from years ago.
You're going to have to narrow down which Venezuelan plot. Oh, good Lord.
And the second man to attempt to kill Donald Trump in 2024 had been to the Ukraine. He wanted to join the Ukraine army. And he'd arrived after such a long way.
He must be a leftist. He was fighting for Ukraine.
Yes. But like, oh, he went such a long way, he can't be crazy, is not an excuse. Nothing says endurance like crazy.
Your body makes your own meth.
Come on, put your groin into it, and stop exhaling on every lift. Under stress, the body produces all the oxygen it needs.
It can make its own alcohol. And some people can't. They have bad breath. The brewer's yeast syndrome, I believe.
Auto brewery something.
Very rare. You won't get away with it as an excuse, listeners. It's not something to try. And we'll roll right into chapter 12. And we meet Anastasius Rykov, and he is not geosearching, but like lunar search. He's trying to match his scapes with his photos.
He's going over all the photos that they got from the Russian probes that we've mentioned earlier in the book so far. There were 3 Russian probes mapping the moon. The third one failed. The second one crashed into the ocean, and I think the first one worked fine. Maybe the first one crashed, because as we find out at the end of this chapter, these unmanned probes each had 3 Russian cosmonauts on them.
Yes. And
unmanned.
For those of you who might not know, there was this guy named Joe Stalin, and he invented Photoshop, where he would make friends and then not be friends anymore and erase them from the pictures and the world.
Yep.
Like, he tried to move history around with scotch tape and glue. Like this, Sergei, We're just going to erase Sergei. He never existed. His name has been erased from the Book of Life.
Yeah, and if you mentioned it at like a party, you'd end up in the gulags the next day.
Oh, I think the party rules were real strict.
But yeah, there's lots of Clive being horny about science for this one, because he talks about orbital photography, computer methods for making stereoscopic maps. And I always loved stereoscopic maps because I forgot they were a thing until my wife was in college for forestry. And forestry does a lot of stereoscopic mapping because you can actually tell how tall the trees are with a stereoscopic map, because it's two maps taken from different cameras a short distance apart, and you look at each map through a lens independently over each eye. So you can make a map in 3 dimensions. And that gives my wife horrible motion sickness.
Topper is doing the OK symbol with both hands and putting them over his eyes like you would be at the eye doctor. Like,
I was making the binocular symbol, not the OK symbol.
Yes, binocular symbol. No, he was not making the OK symbol. No pinkies were up.
Don't pull me into that.
I misspoke. No OK symbols. It was binocular symbols. Or maybe a monocle, one at a time. Or together.
Using stereoscopic maps gives my wife motion sickness. Like, she can't do it. She'll barf. And she somehow got through her program with, high marks without doing the mapping courses, because she physically cannot use the stereoscopic maps.
It is so wild how sight and hearing are a huge part of, bless you, human stabilization. Like, you mess with somebody's hearing enough, you can make the motion sickness. You mess with their vision, mess with their vision enough, same deal. Rykov saw, while he was looking at his stereoscopic imaging, he saw moon men.
Yes.
Yeah, they're just moon men right now. Right now, he's living in a world. There's men on the moon. They're not ours. Maybe they're from there.
So he calls a secret number and calls General Maximos Yosenin, the commander of the Soviet military space mission, who is like, it's 2 a.m, he's drunk. He yells at Rykov, like, why are you going over your boss's head? And Rykov's like, there's people on the moon. And half an hour later, Maximos walks in like full uniform, like completely sober. Is like, okay, let's do this.
Yes. Well, he's a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
That general. Got to hand it to him for that. And boy, does he have faith in his guys, because I don't know if I'd buy that. And also, they'll be there in the morning. Depends on how drunk I am, if I'm a Russian general.
Also, 1, they will be there in the morning. 2, you have to think, if there's men on the moon, it's probably the Americans. And it's never too late to fuck with the Americans. And we get more backstory here. They talk about how the Americans haven't had a manned landing since Apollo 17 in 1972, which would have been 17 years previously. And they're like, well, they can't have been up there all the time. And they look at the pictures, and the general identifies those 2 men as also having a surface-to-air missile launcher. And that's how they... Is that the chapter with Polivoy, or is that later? Oh, no, the missile launcher's in 16. So this is just where Maximos gets the pictures and gets the information.
And they do talk about, like, the payload, because to get a missile launcher up there, it's the reason they have dehydrated food and stuff. Every ounce counts. Mm-hmm. So it's an expensive thing. It's like when you're watching Aliens, and there's water everywhere, and you're like, how? Why? Why is everything so wet? That would be so much weight. Why?
Yeah, even with the space shuttle, it was more than $10,000 a pound.
So that's a very expensive piece of weaponry brought to the moon. And it probably looks awesome, too. That's totally us. It's probably flame jobs on the side of it.
I'm also not sure how well it would work, because there's a lot less atmosphere on the moon for the missile to push against with its exhaust propellant. So I'm imagining this missile going at like 10 miles an hour, just like a nice light jog up into space to shoot down this probe.
Fear the walking missile.
It's the Zamboni of missiles.
The only vehicle you are allowed to drive drunk. A Zamboni.
I like it.
It is a 1-person occupancy. You were never on the ice with other people. The arm is entirely to yourself. It is completely legal to drive the Zamboni drunk.
Excellent. I'll put this...
I don't know if it's done that way, or I don't know if it's only done drunk.
I have a new goal now.
Oh, Chapter 13, Dirk is looking at maps.
Yes, and eating a granola bar.
It kind of made me, but now I want a granola bar. Sandecker's about to pimp Dirk out to the widow, and he just has to go along with it.
Yeah, he gets called up to Sandecker's office, and Jesse is already there, and Sander's like, I hear you two know each other.
They do make nice. I don't know how. If I was treated as shabbily as Dirk was, I would burn a person's life to the ground. But that's me, and I'm a bad person.
I think he wants to, and he definitely gives her the screws for a long time, and she apologizes. Well, I actually don't know if she like properly apologizes. But she's like, I didn't know who you were. I've been so stressed out. Oh my goodness, it was very rude of me, but doesn't quite say sorry.
She didn't really apologize.
Yeah.
She said some excuses that don't really translate into making any kind of sense for being rude. Because when you're being rude, there's really no excuse.
Yeah.
I was rude yesterday to somebody, and I deeply regret it. Her tennis coach was keeping the kids long, and they were all clearly sick. I was like, these kids are sick, and they're in the rain.
Kept them long. I thought it was rained out.
They had gone all the way there and come back, so that they were standing in the rain. He could have given the speech on the bus, but the reason I had to pick her up was because her match was supposed to end at 7, but I had to pick her up at like 4:20, whatever that was, because they were rained out. They were standing in the rain while he was giving them the speech, and I thought that was silly.
Yeah, that's not great.
Because they had the whole hour bus ride back for the speech.
That's when he was composing the speech. This will be my best speech ever.
Like he's 8. I think I scared him. I didn't use a tone above, you should put on a sweater, young man. Like, I didn't go far. Now, does this lady. She doesn't go far in her apologies. She just kind of flitters about and says, we'll go Dutch on dinner? And that makes up for everything.
But also, Dirk doesn't really have much say in the matter because he's being put on leave because Numa can't be seen to be helping her look for her husband. That would be unseemly to put government resources into helping find a billionaire. So he's on leave, so he can do whatever he wants when you're on leave. And what you're going to do is help Jesse LeBaron.
With your friends who are also on leave. And this is paid leave, right?
It better be.
Because why would you accept it otherwise? So this is still taxpayer money.
Yeah.
You can't fool us, Clive.
And the only help that she can give is full use of the blimp and its crew. And she has the report that they got on the blimp, because I guess once they got the bodies off the blimp, they gave the blimp back to her. And it was refilled with hydrogen instead of helium. That hasn't been used since the Hindenburg.
And if you don't know why, go look the Hindenburg up. It's a laugh.
Oh, this is the worst blimp crash ever!
Too soon! Well, there was lots of other reasons. The Hindenburg was painted with rocket fuel.
Oh, well, what was it? There was a kinetic... Do you know who Rip Torn is?
Yes.
He survived a circus fire in Connecticut where they waterproofed the circus tent with gasoline.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And that's why he's a comic. He was a comic.
You gotta laugh at that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about children burning now, for fun.
Let's not.
Dirk gets his friends, of course. Al is gonna come with him. And we find out the real reason he's taking this job. Dirk wants to fly a blimp.
He's never flown one before. He wants to.
And with a wink and a nod, he's like, I'm gonna fly a blimp.
This absolutely does line up with his previous goal of finding the Cyclops. Because if that's what Raymond was looking for, then finding the Cyclops would also give some clues as to what the hell's going on. So he's like, 2 birds, 1 blimp. I can do this.
I get to fly it? Maybe? Yeah. Fly that blimp.
I want to see a chapter where Dirk is just acting like a 5-year-old, just woo, just up at the front of the blimp doing donuts in the sky.
Oh, he's too school for cool, this guy.
Yeah.
And then we go to Sam Emmett. Oh, I love the name Emmett, the FBI chief. He's deep in his feelings. He's feeling hurt and not trusted. And the president's like, give me a week. Get out of your head. This isn't about you. It's a me thing. It's not a you thing.
You don't trust me anymore. And the president's like, I can't trust anyone with this. Trust me, you're better off not knowing for a little bit longer.
And we find out that a former Flush and Right flight surgeon defected and ID'd the bodies that were crushed up on the Zeppelin gondola.
Yes.
So now we have proof that those men were Russians and not the missing billionaire and crew.
Not only Russians, but Russian cosmonauts, because they probably froze to death in space based on the food in their stomach, borscht paste, and oxygen saturation and bone density. So they were probably in space for a while when they died.
So they're thinking their spacecraft came down, they're spitballing, and the Cubans had an extra blimp, so they put dead bodies in it. And they're like, why would Cuba do that? And I'm like, why would Cuba do that? That sounds amazing.
And I think Emmett says, perhaps Cuba's trying to tell us something.
I don't think there was a lot of messages beyond, poking. But wild shit like this? Oh, yeah. There was so much cocaine in the 80s.
I mean, there is already that letter from Castro. And apparently the people who brought that letter snuck into the country on a blimp. So the Cubans captured this blimp, loaded it up with cosmonauts, and sent it to Miami.
And hydrogen.
And hydrogen, yes. And where has a lot of hydrogen? I think I'm skipping ahead. I think I'm actually remembering bits and pieces of this book from when I read it as a kid.
Oh, can we make you cry this episode?
I don't think it's that kind of memories.
I don't have an isopod of Topper to show you to really just shake your entire worldview. So yes, the Soviets had lost 3 moon missions in a row. The Cubans switched the bodies. Hilarious. I mean, the joke doesn't have to make sense for it to be like Dadaist.
Does imply that Raymond is alive though, and in Cuba.
Yes, that is what it implies. And we go to Dr. Mooney visits with the Ira Hagen, but he's in disguise as Thomas Judge. Good solid name.
Yes, a great name. Yeah, Ira Hagen is undercover, says he is with some agency or other with Congress, and he's following up on budget irregularities.
Well, a big muscle-bound nerd.
Yes, he doubles down on the accountant. I'm just an accountant.
Yeah.
No, don't mind me. I'm just here to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. We don't want to waste a penny of anything.
I don't understand all this space science stuff you have going until he then rattles off exactly what they're doing with nuclear-powered lasers for shooting down missiles in space. And he's like, but I just heard that somewhere.
Yeah. A whole page and a half of technical info dump. And he's like, oh, I just read that paragraph, so I don't know what it means, but that's what I heard.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mooney, who's so security-minded, demands his credentials because this is a top-secret organization. But in the meantime, he'll let him look around.
Yes. And they also do lots of talking about Leo Hudson, who used to be in charge of this thing back when he was still alive. And we get lots and lots of backstory on him. I was like, oh my God, Leo Hudson was a super genius. He was flying to a symposium with Dr. Gunnar Ericsson, a brilliant astrophysicist. His specialty was, and I had to write this down,
moon colonies.
Yeah, he was a specialist in lunar synoptic morphology for industrialized peoplement. What the hell does that mean? Space colonies.
Yes.
So we're already racking up our second member of the inner core here, because no one can keep their mouth shut.
And the techno speak is fantastic.
Yeah, Clive read a lot of books for this one.
I think we should wrap up here with Gunnar Ericsson, Dr. Moonman.
All right.
Have a great week or weekend or evening or morning, wherever this may find you, listeners. Scheduling, the hardest part of adulting. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Jet up. Got a blimp that's some publisher painted gold. Got a lost city in Brazil made of gold. Got a statue that's sunk and it's mostly gold. Get the feeling that this book's got a thing for gold. Let's find the Cyclops. Where is the Cyclops? Gotta find the Cyclops. Got a cop that's probably on the spectrum. Got a sheriff that's besties with a mortician. Got Dirk and a dude with a rich one. But that's fine as long as he can drive a Zeppelin. Gotta find a Cyclops. Gotta read a Cyclops. Clive, cause the Cyclops. This book's the Cyclops.
This has been Cussler Hustlers, your host and opponent. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Hustlers.